A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. And now, I certainly should have talked about Max Payne. And I'm specifically talking about the 2008 film adaptation starring the likes of Phoebe Bridges, Mark Wahlberg, Mila Kunis, and of course, Ludacris. It's simply put about the one officer of the law that is capable of slightly altering time, dodging bullets left and right, as if to be some sort of real-life Flash or Dash Par. So when you really put it together, what this film is trying to do is to simply capitalize on a video game series, one that was in fact very popular throughout the 2000s. Because up until the very point where the latest game had come out at that point in time, the 2008 film would eventually hit theaters. Unfortunately, it did not quite perform very well. Let me explain why. A good explanation for this is simply put that this film is a video game adaptation. What more could there possibly be to describe? It would be like if you simply took a book and adapted it into a film. There's really not much you can actually work with. Or if you were to simply take the adaptations based off of a popular song by a popular artist or a popular band. You can't really go very far with it. But by creating an original idea, something that people have never heard of before, you are more than guaranteed to attract a lot of attention, and therefore gain plenty of publicity, lots of money, lots of viewership, lots of credibility, and lots of fun. But Max Payne, while it certainly was popular in the video game world, certainly did not bring up a lot of good hope and prosperity for the film world. With such projects that came out in that same exact year, 2008, it really makes you wonder, why would they ever make this? Well, that's simply put. For one thing, the likes of Bo Thorne and Luke Lake, Sam Lake, so to speak, not Luke Lake, not even related. But the thing is, Thorne and Lake were in charge of writing the film. And as with the others in line, the screenplayers, directors, producer, executives, they all pretty much came together and decided to make a video game adaptation. Certainly not the first to ever take place, because there have been plenty of others that came out before them. But it's certainly important to know that what this film does is it takes the acting potential of Mark Wahlberg and it places him in the very, very world of the main character himself, Max Payne, an officer of the law who has so many extraordinary skills, unlike the typical lawman that exists. And what we get to see here is, simply put, Wahlberg's acting potential put to the real test. Because while we do get to see plenty of other films with him in it, we definitely don't get to enjoy much. And that's because Max Payne simply is Max Payne. The very thing that we see from the games is brought up here. But when to describe the plot, if I were to describe it at all, it would be as simple as saying that the officer of the law is being hunted by multiple people, including his own brethren. His own department is after him. And he has to enlist the help of a former detective to find out who is responsible for a series of serious crimes that had happened. So of course, it's pretty much what you think it is. A classic setup act that is basically there just to ride out through the entirety of the film. And with Wahlberg simply trying his best to avoid suspicion and avoid attention and avoid contact with anybody at all. Both he and Ludacris, they sure do make a bit of a duo, right? Almost like with what we've seen with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. All the films in Lethal Weapon sure have done exceptionally well for what they do, but Max Payne doesn't do anywhere close to that. Buddy cop cliches have only gone so far, and by the late 2000s, we started to see little to no reason for this. Of course, with other such hits that we've seen, it's almost impossible for us to comprehend what we could possibly look out for. But you know what though? The plot itself is nothing much else than just a cop and a detective out on the run from the rest of the law, the rest of their own people, the rest of civilization, on their very, very, very own to try and discover who is responsible for various crimes that had recently occurred. This mob in particular that had caused these exact crimes of all sorts. They're indeed waiting for them. And that's pretty much where we just see the ending. Yeah. Not very climatic. Nothing very much original, just a bit of a generic piece, where the villain is defeated, and Payne himself has his name cleared and is out to enjoy a good life again. Hopefully. Though I should mention that there actually was a sequel called Max Payne Valhalla, released 4 years later in 2012. I do feel like that I'll probably never get the chance to talk about it again after this, so let's talk a bit about this. Max Payne Valhalla, 2012. The sequel to Max Payne 2008 is simply put, Max Payne coming back home after some hard work, only to discover that his own family had been murdered. Wife and child. And he's simply out there on a vengeance spree, finding out who is responsible for all of this. Comes across some contacts, comes across a lot of people, and I tell you, watching both of these films myself, especially trying to piece together everything I could possibly come up with just to make a good video out of it, it's not easy. And that's simply because these movies had little to no good possible reason to exist. They're generic, mediocre, and quite possibly even lower than that. But am I able to speak that sort of mind? Probably not. I'd much rather stay appropriate for all people to watch. And I suppose that cuts it for today. That's Max Payne and Max Payne Valhalla. Not to be confused with other variations of Valhalla being used as a subtitle. So if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.